Welcome to Football Conspiracies.
I'm Jared Cole.
And I'm Jared Rabinovich.
This week's episode, Feed the Pit.
On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing a topic that I came across and was a lot more relevant during this past postseason. Have you ever heard of the Bills Pit before?
I'm not, but you're a big Bills fan, so I can see why you were attracted to the story.
Yeah, it's actually it's one of my favorite NFL superstitions I've seen. I wouldn't exactly call it a conspiracy in the classical sense of what most our episodes would be covering, but it has a lot of the same themes to it, and I thought this would be something the listeners would enjoy.
Okay.
This is a trend that seems to have originated on TikTok. I have been unable to ascertain who the original creator of the trend was, so I'm not exactly sure where the origins of it was, if it came from possibly a Reddit post before this, but as far as I can tell, this was some bullshit TikTok theory that blew up. The backstory is that the Buffalo Bills, I'm not sure if you are aware, are in the process of building a new stadium that's set to be complete in 2026.
Yeah, aren't they building it close to their current one?
Yes, they are. It's like right across the street.
Right next door, yeah.
You can see it right next door, exactly. So, at the moment, it's a construction site, right? It's still a couple years out from being built.
Yeah.
So, it is, in this state, just a massive pit.
Okay.
I have a picture of it right here if you want to describe it for the viewers.
Yeah, it just looks like a big construction site, and they've just dug out where a stadium size worth of dirt.
Exactly, about a stadium-sized hole in the ground.
Yeah.
For the record, and for the viewers, if they decide to search up this picture, that is about a 30-foot drop.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't look quite like that from the overhead shot we're looking at, but it drops down about 30 feet. So, to summarize the theory that we are going to be digging into, or the superstition at the very least, I saw these tweets, and I think they're going to be able to summarize the phenomenon much better than I ever could. So, do you want to read this tweet from @perfectlyfine89 on X?
Just saw a TikTok, and apparently the Bills are building a new stadium, and so far, it's just a big pit in the ground. 5 games ago, a fan fell into the pit, and then they won. Since then, a fan sacrifices themselves to the pit before every game, and they win. I'm dead serious. No way.
Yeah. And this has garnered 36,500 likes and a whole lot of reposts. So, I have this other one from @BuffaClose, another tweet. You can read this as well just to give the listeners a little more context before I dig into it.
I have a source, Dr. Jerome Silberman, inside the ECMC emergency room, and has informed me that despite no reports shared by local media, they have seen a patient that has fallen into the pit on every single game day since the start of the Bills' 5-game win streak.
Obviously a little ridiculous, but you get the gist of this theory.
Yeah,
now.
Bills are sacrificing fans for wins.
Exactly.
It makes total sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So pretty much, as you've been able to surmise, there's been allegations that before every game of the Bills' 6-game win streak that happened at the end of this last season, that someone sacrificed himself to what became dubbed the Bills Pit. All over Twitter, people were talking about this. All over TikTok, me and my other Bills friends started talking about this, how we needed to feed the pit. Did you ever hear this? Did this ever make it out of the Bills Mafia?
I'm sure it did, but I didn't hear it.
Exactly. It's because it was pretty isolated to us, but, it was obviously not a true belief, but definitely a superstition some of my friends had that if hard pressed, you could get them to say that they might have believed it for real a little bit.
Sounds believable to me.
I mean, it was definitely pretty popular. Soon after, the phrase I just mentioned, feed the pit, started to become pretty popularized. I have a quick photo right here. Once again, you could describe this to the listener of the Google Trends for feed the pit.
The Google Trends, feed the pit, there's nothing until December 10th, when the team starts their win streak, and there's a massive spike between January 21st and 27th.
That would be the week before the Chiefs game, where the Bills ended up losing in the playoffs.
Fans were feeding a lot of people to the pit before that Chiefs game.
Well, certainly there was calls to be feeding people to the pit.
Yeah.
Because, these past 5 games, or these past 6 games, allegedly, we had been feeding people and we'd been winning. So obviously this is a pretty crazy superstition, so it's no wonder tons of attention was given to it. But the real question this podcast is trying to answer is the truth behind this seeming nonsense. So do you want to hear the truth of the Bills pit story that I've been able to ascertain from a few hours of research?
Yes, I want to hear the truth.
All right, so this is what I've been able to cobble together, and afterwards we'll go over some further fan theories that I have that are my favorites. All right, so here is the unadulterated truth. This story seems to start with what has been one of the most out-of-pocket NFL article headlines of this year. It reads, "Naked fan on drugs at Bills game charged for going into construction pit at new stadium," written by Nick Wajton for USA Today, published on September 19th, 2023.
I wish I had that newspaper because I would have clipped that. That's
Of course.
that's a hilarious headline.
It's amazing. I doubt it made it to print, but I certainly found it online. But do you notice something weird about this publication date?
It's the beginning of the season.
September 19th. It's a little weird. This was, you know, a few months before this win streak ever began.
Yeah.
And Feed the Pit, as you saw by this Google Trends,
It was in
no one was discussing the pit
December.
back in September. Yeah,
It was December.
was the first mention of it, exactly. So it's pretty weird that this story starts back in September, but it'll begin to make sense once I get into this story. So before I do get into this article, I just want to say that this is not an incident I'm trying to make fun of. The man in this story I'm about to speak about is likely suffering from mental illness, and I do hope that he's been able to find the help that is suitable for him.
Yes, 100%.
All right, so let's get into the story. Just before kickoff, at the Week 2 matchup of the Bills versus the Raiders, police were called to respond to an incident at the new Bills Stadium, which is, as we already have discussed, currently just a massive pit.
Yes.
When the police arrived at the construction site, they saw what they described as, and now I'm quoting from the article, "a 29-year-old man who went inside a portable restroom, covered himself in the fecal that was found inside, left, stripped down, and jumped the 10-foot fence to get inside the construction site."
What?
Yes.
That's amazing.
A little crazy, of course.
Yeah.
And now you understand why I'm speaking of mental illness.
Yes,
And
100%.
exactly. Nothing I want to make light of, but obviously this is a pretty absurd incident.
Yes, this is very bizarre.
And it's also important to note that the man was also said to be under the influence of narcotics. To describe what happened in the rest of the story, I've taken this quote from Erie Sheriff John Garcia, who's one of the responding officers on the scene. "When you're taking LSD, cocaine, and marijuana, you're going to not read the signs. You're not going to read anything. You wouldn't be in a porta potty, jumping inside it, covering yourself with human excrement. You wouldn't be doing that. This is a very isolated issue. He scaled that fence right up, jump over this other side, and next thing you know, he's running towards the pit. By the time the ECC security guard got behind him, now this individual is falling, tumbling down into the pit. It happened so quickly. It's a large site. You can't have people every 6 feet. You never anticipate something like this to happen. We're going to look at it and get better and work with our partners and give them some advice on getting better." So what do you think of that?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is very funny that a man just on a ton of drugs just covers himself in a bunch of poop
Yes.
and jumps in a pit.
And from what I understand, what I've been able to ascertain, he was intending to go to the old stadium to
No, he
watch
was-
the Bills game that was currently happening.
Like he had tickets to go to the game.
Yeah, this incident happened 15 minutes before kickoff.
That's so funny.
So, according to police, the man was not seriously injured. He was given an appearance ticket and released after being brought to the Erie County Medical Center. So, the man is all right. He does have a court appearance lined up, but hopefully everything is worked out with the situation. And like I said, he can find the help he needs.
Yeah.
The important thing for our episode is after this incident, the Bills went on to win against the Raiders 38-10.
Oh. Well, I mean, it's the Raiders, and it was the Bills.
That's fair, but this is
I
coming
know,
off
it's a little bit of good luck.
It's also coming off the loss to the Aaron Rodgers-less Jets of Week 1.
Yeah, it was a big win. It was a much-needed win for the Bills, for sure.
Exactly. But this is, as we can see now, the progenitor of what would become the Bills pit theory. But what I'm sorry to break to the listeners right now is that this is one of only 2 recorded incidents of someone going into the pit.
Like, written in a newspaper or like medical proof?
Both. I have not been able to find any, not even a video on TikTok have I been able to find that shows someone going to the pit other than this and one other time.
That's disappointing.
It is a little disappointing because I thought we were feeding the pit and winning our games.
Yeah, so what happened the other time?
Before we get to that time, I also do want to mention that, unfortunately, like I was saying, for the first 5 games of the Bills' 6-game win streak, there is no confirmed evidence of anyone feeding the pit.
Oh, for the first 5 games.
Unfortunately, for all the games in the Bills' 6-game win streak, there's no confirmed evidence that anyone was fed to the pit.
All 6.
All 6.
Whoa.
The only time that the Bills were seen winning after someone fell into the pit was this first incident in week 2.
Okay, so then what happened the second time?
Great question. There is video evidence, which I will show you, of the pit that was posted on the 21st of January, the day of the divisional playoff game that saw the Bills losing to the Chiefs. So I found that pretty interesting that this is
So they're 1-1 when someone falls in the pit, is what you're saying.
It does seem like it. If you take this video I'm about to show you as fact that it was filmed on the day it was posted, which is January 1st, this theory is quite unfortunately completely busted.
Okay.
But I will show you this because I remember this being the famous video that was going around on the day that the pit was truly blowing up, and when those Google trends I showed you come to fruition. So I'll show you this, and you can tell the viewers what you see.
Man, just in the construction zone on a massive pile of snow, and he just disappears. He just jumps off the edge and just disappears.
Yes. So allegedly this man kind of did a slide down a pretty steep slope, but the reports say that it's too steep. He kind of just jumped down, slid to the bottom, climbed his way out of it. Nothing too crazy, but from this angle...
it looks like he just jumps into a pit and disappears.
Exactly. I do recommend finding at Buffalo Woody on Twitter if you do want to see this video. He posted it, and it's pretty easily accessible. Unfortunately, this is the end of the tale of the Bills pit, as it is. I did want there to be more substance to it of some sort, but the truth of the matter is somebody jumped into a pit in September. Some TikTok decided to blow it up towards the end of their win streak, saying that before every game someone jumped into the pit. But the truth is, the only time someone jumped into a pit after that was the man on the day that the Bills lost in the playoffs.
Based on the facts you just laid out for me, if a fan jumps into the pit during the regular season, they win, and if it's in the playoffs, they'll lose.
You know what? I like that. Maybe we should start a Feed the Pit campaign for the regular season next year.
Who knows? Maybe the Bills will go 17-0.
We have a sample size of 1, so we'd be wrong. Before we move on, I just wanted to show, once again, some wackier stuff I found in the process of reading this. I found this one pretty fantastic, and it brings up a story that I think needs mentioning on any podcast that talks about football, especially a podcast like this one. There's also a theory that the Bills' win streak, rather than being caused by the Bills' pit, was actually caused by the Bills' coach, Sean McDermott. Okay. Do you happen to know what could have possibly caused this win streak? What happened with Sean McDermott in the weeks, in the week before this win streak started?
He watched game film and planned for his opponent.
You know what? You're probably right. But something more important happened. The theory states that the win streak was able to begin because Sean McDermott finally apologized for the remarks he made during Bills training camp in 2019. I don't need to say what it is. I know you know what these remarks are, right? Of course.
Oh my god. That was the good luck charm.
Exactly.
The good karma coming his way.
I got a quote here from Elena Getzenberg on ESPN. This is about the incident that we are referring to now. Do you want to go along and read it for the audience?
Okay, sure. Buffalo Bills coach Sean McDermott said Thursday that he regretted mentioning 9/11 in a 2019 training camp talk with his team and immediately apologized to his players. McDermott emphasized he made the comments to discuss the importance of communication and being on the same page with the team. He said he regretted mentioning 9/11 in my message that day, and I immediately apologized to the team. Not only was 9/11 a horrific event in our country's history, but a day that I lost a good family friend. As first reported by Go Long, McDermott told players in a speech to come together and used the terrorists on 9/11 as an example, asking players in the room questions about how the attacks were executed and referencing the hijackers getting on the same page. Multiple players who were with the team at the time confirmed the story to ESPN, while others who were there told ESPN they did not recall it.
So, you obviously know of the famous 9/11 remarks. Right?
Yes, that was a wild time.
Yes, indeed. I didn't see anyone taking this theory seriously, like I saw some people taking the Bills' pit.
No, it was just good karma might have caused.
And when we were talking about potential superstitious causes of this win streak, I thought it would have been criminal to not bring up this incident.
Yes, this kickstarted the same win streak as the Bills' pit. That's crazy.
Exactly. This article was released about 3 days before the win streak began. So truly, he made this apology, and the floodgates opened for the Bills. We were missing the playoffs until he made these comments.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean McDermott, for your 5-year too late apology. We really appreciate it. And just one more wacky piece I thought I had to touch on before we move on from the Bills' pit. In an article I was reading about this, which was actually very entertaining, if any of the listeners want to give it a read, it's called Everything You Need to Know About Buffalo's Pit, the Most Powerful Force in the NFL, by Andrew Gruttadaro, written on January 18th, 2024. So, this article, I got a lot of the information for this episode from, but there was one tidbit at the end that I thought it was a very satirical article. So I thought maybe this was just added in as an extra little joke on the end to add to the spice of this. But it says in a correction at the bottom, well, the new stadium is not being built on a former cemetery. The current stadium is built atop an early Native American burial site. This is 100% fact.
What?
The Bills' current stadium is on top of a Native American burial site.
No wonder they're cursed.
I know, and people have been wondering for so long.
How long have they been at the stadium?
I think, at least a few decades. It's a pretty old stadium.
1973. Yeah, so no wonder the Bills have been cursed for so long. Highmark was opened in 1973 when the Bills play, and they've been... what was it, in the 90s when they went to the Super Bowl for 4 straight years and then lost 4 straight Super Bowls?
That is exactly when the Bills went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times and lost 4 straight Super Bowls.
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yes.
A team would lose 4 straight Super Bowls if they were cursed for playing on an ancient burial ground.
We might have also been cursed by the future actions of our running back, but for those less football-minded listeners, that former running back I just referred to was the infamous O.J. Simpson. But I thought that was definitely worth mentioning when speaking about the Bills' pit.
Yeah.
Hopefully they picked a more suitable site for the new Highmark Stadium.
Well, according to this article, it won't be on a burial ground, so that's already a good start.
That's what we're hoping for. So hopefully the Bills are able to atone for their sins alongside Sean McDermott, and maybe the Bills will one day be able to win that elusive Super Bowl. All right.
It's not happening.
No, well, one can hope. One can only dream. It's hard being a Leafs fan and a Bills fan at the same time. You gotta give me a break. All right, and with that, we'll move on to J. Cole's segment.
Alrighty, welcome listeners to my segment of the podcast where I delve deep into bizarre and unexplained occurrences that makes you question the reality that is the NFL. I've got some mind-bending stories and stats that will have you reaching for your tinfoil hats in no time. For this story, we're going to rewind all the way back to 1920.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, it's a long time ago. This is before the NFL was the NFL. It was known as the APFA.
What does that stand for?
The American Professional Football Association.
Catchy.
So they were the predecessors to the NFL. So they were an emerging league, they were finding their footing, and they were ready to crown their first champions, the Akron Pros. Okay, they were given the trophy known as the Brunswick Bulk Colander Cup.
The
Brunswick Bulk Colander Cup is what the trophy was called, donated by Brunswick Bulk, a company.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, was it a colander?
Kind of, yeah. It was like, if you think of like the original Stanley Cup, how it was just like a big bowl,
oh,
like a stand
okay.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there's controversy surrounding this. Straight away, first championship ever. So the championship was awarded based on the best record, not based on a end of season tournament like we know today. So the Akron Pros weren't exactly a dominant team. They actually tied with the Buffalo All-Americans and the Decatur Stallies, later to be known as the Chicago Bears in 1922.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On top of that, the man presiding over the meeting that awarded the championship, so basically the commissioner of the league, owned the Akron Pros.
Okay.
So a little bit of a conflict of interest, if you ask me.
Yeah, it would seem that way.
So people wonder what kind of happened here. Like, how did the Akron Pros manage to, like, how were they awarded the cup? The Buffalo All-Americans and the Decatur Stallies both objected and put in their complaints. Nothing happened. The Akron Pros were awarded the championship, and that was that. But there's another layer of mystery. It's not just a conspiracy here. The trophy itself vanished without a trace after the ceremony.
What?
So at the time in the 1920s, the Akron Pros were put into the record books as the champions.
Sure.
After the trophy went missing, it was just sort of forgotten that they had won until they updated the record books in the 1970s. So they had won the championship in the 1920s. Everyone forgot about it. And then they were given the championship back in the 1970s, essentially.
What do you mean everybody forgot about it?
It was just erased from the record books.
So how was it brought back?
They did a big audit of the NFL and of past seasons because they wanted to update them and put them in the Hall of Fame and stuff. And this is one of the occurrences that they came across.
All right.
It doesn't end there.
Okay.
The trophy ended up being replaced by something called the Ed Thorpe Memorial Trophy, after Ed Thorpe. That trophy also went missing.
Okay. Did it go missing in a similar manner?
Not quite, because this one eventually resurfaced. It actually was found.
How long after?
So this trophy was used in 1934 all the way until supposedly 1969, but the original trophy was found in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame as their 1967 Super Bowl II Packers team engraved into the side, meaning that the 1968 Baltimore Colts and the 1969 Minnesota Vikings never actually rose the real trophy.
Whoa.
But a replica, because the real trophy was in Green Bay's possession.
Did the league know that Green Bay had it?
The league had no clue until 1970, when the NFL introduced the Vince Lombardi trophy, the trophy we know today and everything about it. But the championship trophy has a very, very messy history in the NFL.
So do we know where that trophy is now? Is it still with Green Bay?
The Ed Thorpe Memorial Trophy is currently in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. Still. But the Brunswick Bulk Colander Cup from 1920 is still missing.
It's still missing.
It's still missing.
The first cup was only ever awarded one time.
It was only ever awarded one time.
And it was awarded to the owner of the league.
Yes. And his team.
And then it immediately went missing.
Immediately went missing. Everyone forgot about it. And the NFL and the APFA continued as it did.
In the interim, for the next 10 years, they have just a random, interim trophy. And then in the 1930s, they get this second trophy you're speaking of.
Yeah.
That trophy, the Ed Thor trophy, is used from the 30s
1934.
Is used from then till the late 60s.
Well, until 1970 is when they officially made the switch to the Vince Lombardi.
Yes, but there was 2 years at the end of the 60s where the trophy where a replica of the trophy was being used because the Green Bay Packers had stolen it.
Yeah.
That is a wacky, wacky story.
Yeah, this story highlights the messy, messy beginnings of the NFL. Back then, things weren't always fair and square, but it also reminds us of the evolution of the league from those early days where you could just lose a trophy to the multi-billion-dollar industry it is today. So I hope you think about this, because I will the next time the Vince Lombardi trophy gets hoisted, and I hope you guys do too. because I want you to remember the 2 trophies that came before it, the 2 forgotten trophies. A reminder that even the most celebrated leagues have a past, and sometimes the most interesting stories get forgotten.
Wow, that's a good one you dug up. Wow, nice. Thank you for that. Makes me itchy to do a history episode for these folks. Maybe we'll dig a little bit into the early days of the NFL in one of our next few episodes and dig up the conspiracies there.
Oh, I got another early days NFL controversy coming up.
All right, it looks like you guys got some historical NFL coming up in your future.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
You can find us on Twitter/X at FB Conspiracies, where we will post all the graphics we spoke about during this episode.
You can also reach us by email using fbconspiracies@gmail.com.
A special thanks to Blaze for the intro and outro music.
If you enjoyed, consider leaving a review.
Join us next week for more football conspiracies.
I was switching up the line like that.
Yeah.